Boy, you know, listening to all of the opinions and the ideas and the lies, frankly, that come out of everybody's mouth, and I'm talking about politicians, I'm talking about pundits, news people, anybody involved in politics, the unions, the leadership of this group or that group or the next group, even your pastors in your churches. Everybody has got an angle. Everybody's got a hustle. And the question is, are you aware of it, and are you being misled by it? You know, I know people get mad when I pick on churches, and I don't really care, because I think churches are one of the, you know, the organizations that you should have the most ability to trust, and yet, frankly, that's not the way it works. We kind of assume that our government is, you know, or we've always been taught that it was working for our best interest. But it's not true, because it's been so sold down to the special interests and these people who, you know, pay all this money. I mean, I talked yesterday to you about this Princeton and Northwestern study that very clearly states that the United States of America is no longer a republic. I hope you followed through and read that. Now, you may not have read the whole thing, but there is a place for you to grab it and download the entire PDF, which, I mean, it's 42 pages. But here's the point. The researchers come to the following conclusions. The central point that emerges from our research is that economic elites and organized groups representing business interests have substantial independent impact on U.S. government policy, while mass-based interest groups and average citizens have little or no independent influence. The truth of the matter is, everything that you thought you knew about, that you understood, that you kind of believed in, is false. And the proof is everywhere around you. I was going to talk to you in this segment about the way in which 1,000 insurers were listed in the Obamacare rolls in California. Now, California put up its own, exchange. And they didn't want to use the federal one. They wanted to build one for California. And there are, I think there's only 2 insurers that are offered there, which, you know, defies the whole idea of choice, right? And it wasn't bad enough that the president lied to us, and it wasn't bad enough that Sebelius lied to us, and it wasn't bad enough that every politician we talked to lied to us, even those who were against it. Everybody's a flippin' liar. Where is honor and integrity and truth and justice in this country anymore? It doesn't exist. Everybody's a liar. I mean, I'm giving you my opinion, but I'm not sitting here clearly misrepresenting facts in order to try to drive you to some conclusion or nudge you, according to Kastenstein's Nazi methodology, to redirect society based on these nudges. I mean, how insane is that? Why doesn't everybody just leave everybody alone? Everybody is a flippin' psychopath. Have you not noticed? There is no such thing as truth from anybody's mouth. And these people who work for these organizations will sit there and openly lie in an effort to protect a position that they haven't even really made a decision on. It's just a standard of their company. In this case, this exchange here from California, they put 1,000 doctors on the list of covered doctors that were going to accept, you know, California Obamacare, right? And this was 2 months or a couple of months before open enrollment. And it turns out that, so of course, you know, everybody's looking at the list of doctors and saying, well, you know, if I get on this plan, I can get this doctor who's right near me and he's in this prestigious hospital and, you know, so forth and so on. And I feel much more confident knowing that, you know, I can get Dr. Jones, who's at this prestigious hospital, instead of Dr., you know, Spock, who is at a little clinic over there and he accepts Medicare and he hasn't washed his hands in 3 months. Anthem Blue Cross was the one who did this. And Covered California is the plan that they were calling it. Turns out that none of these doctors in the list of 1,000 were actually accepting Covered California, because don't forget that they're paying Medicare and Medicaid-based rates, right, which are very, very low. Lower even than Medicare. Medicaid is the lowest. I mean, it's indigent care. Let's call it what it is, right? It's free health care for the poor. And so, you go for a doctor's visit and they pay something paltry like, I don't know, $8 or something. I mean, the average doctor looks at that and says, it's not worth my time to get out of bed in the morning for that. By the time I go in and I pay all my medical bills and I pay my malpractice and I pay the rent and I pay the bills on all of this machinery and garbage I have to buy to be in the medical business, and I pay the girls who sit there and set the appointments and the associate doctors who come in and give you the shot and this one who takes blood, $8 a visit just isn't worth doing. I may as well go retire. Or I may as well go to work for a hospital where I just get a salary and that's the end of it. There's no point in being in practice. But it was a bait and switch, and it was knowledgeable and it was willful. And that's my point. Everywhere you go, everywhere you turn, everybody is lying about everything. And I didn't grow up, with the idea that that's where we were headed as a country. I looked at it through utopian eyes as a younger man or something, but I mean, we want to believe, because we want to believe, that people we work with and communicate with are inherently being honest with us. But it's just not so. In fact, I think it's the reverse. For you to find somebody honest to deal with is so rare that it's almost impossible for you to, move about in a world like this, because you have to distrust everyone. And when you do come across that rare gem of a person who deals with you honestly, your guard is so high that, you may walk away from the perfect scenario because you just couldn't trust that person. And listen, it's not limited to who you're doing business with. It's limited to it goes as far as your doctor. Is he actually prescribing me a pill I need, or is he prescribing it for me because he's got stock in the company, for crying out loud? Or he's been paid by Pfizer or Squibb or SmithKline or whoever is the producer of that drug to make sure that I get it. I don't want to live that way. I really don't. I don't want to live where every minute of every moment of every day I've got to be on my guard about what's the real motivation behind whatever this person is saying, and what is their real intention, and what. If I've got to sit there and second guess every conversation with every person I have to do business with, then I don't want to do it. The CMA, the California marketplace, Anthem Blue Cross is the trader who did this, and they started acknowledging the error after they were getting complaints from the physicians who were listed mistakenly. How convenient, right? This one woman, she went over, she chose the Anthem plan because the website that the plan had a variety of doctors from Stanford. And she was like, wow, that's great. I mean, this is a highly recognized and well-respected medical organization, and by going over here, I should be getting, great medical care. When I started going through the doctor list, she says, each one, and I called them up, none of them actually accepted the Covered California plan. The premise of Covered California is that you're able to compare plans and see which one is best for you. But if they're presenting that they have all these doctors in the network, but they don't, then it doesn't work. No, what it really means is that you were baited and switched. And that's the name and the premise of this segment. Everything, ladies and gentlemen, is a bait and switch. The entire Obamacare debacle has been a bait and switch. Barack Obama is a bait and switch. Make me president and I'll do all these great things. He becomes president and he turns out to be this rogue, animal that nobody quite believed. The whole idea of, you can keep your doctor, you can keep your health care, don't worry, this is all going to be good. It's only meant to cover, the uninsured so that nobody can go bankrupt. Yet, of course, nobody's actually accepting the plan. And by the way, this is de rigueur. It's not just California. This is all over the country. I'm reading story after story after story of people who were saying, well, I went through the entire doctor's list, and none of the doctors are actually accepting new patients. So I've got insurance, but what good is it? Because I can't actually go get an appointment. Turns out the numbers are finally starting to come back in. Obama administration still will not tell us how many people who signed up have actually paid between October and March 31st. Nobody will tell. But one state came out, I think it was Alabama, and you know what they said? Less than half. Less than half. So the 8 million that Obama is touting might actually be 4 million. And by the way, according to Alabama, not only did less than half of them pay, but all of them were given a subsidy to become members. That means the taxpayers are paying to subsidize those people to get them on. And even with the subsidy, only half of them stayed on. Only half of them, not stayed on, paid their share. Everything that touches your life has now become a bait and switch banana republic tactic. And I got to tell you, people, that's not what I'm interested in my life. I don't want to have to second guess and be fearful that everything I'm told or everything that is presented to me, even in writing by those I trusted, is really, it's like, yeah, I promise, but you got your fingers crossed behind your back. I promise, Mommy, I won't go over there. If that's the world that we've created for ourselves, is that the America that we really expect that was what we expected we were going to get? I mean, is that why we're paying all these massive taxes? Is that why we have given up our freedom and our privacy? Is it really? To be lied to be manipulated, to be malleable, to be pounded in like soft copper, pounded into shape. None of us are steel anymore. You see, you can sit there and pound steel with a hammer all day long, and guess what? You're not going to change the shape of it. But you can sit there and take gold or copper, and you can pound it and pound it and pound it, and eventually you'll mold it into a different shape. That's what's happening. We are being pounded into shape. Pounded on every side by police forces who are running around and kicking in doors of innocent people because some guy said, well, I'll get out of trouble, so you got to go over to that house over there and you'll find a half ounce of dope on the kitchen counter. Trust me. No verification, no backup, no qualification of whether or not that guy might have actually been misleading them because he's trying to get himself out of trouble. Let's just go kick in the door and see whether or not he's telling the truth. If you see something, say something. Your entire government is based on everybody ought to be a rat. Your president came out here and said, don't worry about this. This plan I put together is intended for one thing, to cover those people who cannot afford coverage on their own through a pre-existing condition. Guess what? The numbers are back. The CBO, the same group that is supposed to be nonpartisan, which is not possible at all, I might add, and but the CBO comes back and says, after it's all said and done, over the course of the next 10 years, only 25 million people are going to be covered. But those are the same 25 million people, are actually only 25 million out of 35 million who are going to lose their health insurance. We're at a net negative number of 10 million more who have lost their insurance. Not to mention the original 20 million they told us about who needed insurance in the first place. So at the end of the day, we're going to have 35 million people uninsured. We only started out with 20 or 25 million people uninsured. Most of those were illegal aliens that didn't qualify in the first place anyway. So we were sold a bill of goods. And we're going to pay for it. Between now and doomsday, this thing is going to hang over our heads like the swords of Damocles. And every once in a while, they're going to jack the rate. If you think things are bad now, you've only got 40% of the country paying 90% of the bills. What do you think is going to happen when this $1 trillion turns into $2 trillion, turns into $3 trillion? I mean, ladies and gentlemen, I don't understand what America doesn't see about what's happening around them. Do you realize that the original tax rates when we first passed taxes back in what was it 1912, 1913, when the IRS initially got its authority, if you want to call it that, to tax us into oblivion? The tax rates, I mean, the highest tax rate you could pay was 6%, and you had to earn like Bill Gates money in order to qualify for that. That was the only way that you could do that. There was no other way that you could be taxed, more than 1 or 2% on your income. The top tax bracket in 1913 was 17%. I'm sorry, 7%. In 2014, it's 39.6. The top tax range between from the lowest taxes to the highest taxes in 1913 was from 1% of income to 7%. And by the way, it wasn't income on people, it was income on corporations. In 2014, the lowest tax rate you can pay is 10. The highest is 39.6. The top tax bracket in today's dollars in 1913, in order for you to hit the top tax bracket, you had to earn $11.6 million a year. Now, in order for you to pay the highest tax bracket, you only have to break $450,000. Anything above $450,000, and you're paying the highest tax price that's available. In today's tax revenues, today's dollars, we collected in 1913 $16.6 billion of revenue. And that was enough to run the country. Now we've collected $3.029 trillion, and we're still $1 trillion in the hole. The family standard deduction that used to be given out in 1913 was $93,000. In other words, the first $93,000 you made, you paid nothing on. Now, it's $12,400. As if that's enough for a family to live on. That's $1,000 a month. It's not even Social Security, folks. The total number of 1040s filed back in 1913 was 358,000 people. In other words, 358,000 people actually had to pay or file a tax return. You know how many it is now? 145 million plus. Back then, the IRS code had 400 pages. 400 pages. Now, it has 73,954. It had 400, now it has 74,000. 400 pages, ladies and gentlemen, isn't even the instructions. And yet, no corporations are paying tax, none of any substance. None of these multinationals pay tax. They all hide it overseas, or they get through it with loopholes. They hire banks of accountants and attorneys. They got an accountant and attorney teams like football teams, the size of the New York Giants or the Dallas Cowboys. So all they do is sit around and figure out ways to get away from paying. The total tax revenues are $3 trillion. All of that, almost all of it, exclusively brought on the backs of individuals, not corporations, because they're not paying. Yeah, the small company, the guy who hires 50, 80, 125 people, he's paying. But the big companies, the ones who were making billions upon billions of dollars, they're not. And yet, they're the ones who were taking those profits, and they are buying legislation that benefits them. And your congressman is standing there with his hand out, ready to lick any boot that comes along. And it's not just the boots. Everything is a lie. Everything is a scam. Every president that we've had since the dawn of the 20th century, since 1900, has been a tyrant looking to make his mark. They're more concerned about their legacy. What are they going to leave behind in my name? Than they are about Mrs. McGillicuddy and little Bobby and little Stevie. Do they have shoes to wear? Can they walk? I watched Rand Paul the other night. At the same time, he was talking about this crap going on in Bundy land. And, I mean, the guy was embarrassing. Well, I'm trying to pass legislation to resolve that. You know, Harry Reid's got the Senate by the short hair, knucklehead. You're not going to get a damn thing passed through the Senate. Especially not anything benefiting the Bundy Ranch. What kind of an idiot are you? But to make matters even worse, then, you know, he and whatever her name was, Megyn Kelly, are talking about this girl who had to walk to school. And she has to take 5 forms of transportation to get to a school where she can go, that she chooses to go to, because she lives in a neighborhood where, you know, the school isn't even worth going to. It's like a little prison, I guess, and full of nothing but riots and violence. And Rand Paul's like, it's such a heartwarming story. You know, it's so heartwarming. Her parents cared enough to make sure that she gets over there every day. You know what Megyn Kelly said? It's not a heartwarming story. It's disturbing. I was mad when I watched it to think that a kid has to take 5 forms of transportation and her parents have to go out of the way to do what you guys won't do by legislation. Well, it is a heartwarming story. He goes right back to the same refrain. He's such a false, phony fake. Every last one of them. It's a heartwarming story because it shows her parents care enough. That's a parent's job, you dolt. And every parent would do that if they weren't so busy running around like gerbils on a wheel trying to come up with another $3.8 billion a year for you traitors to squander. Ladies and gentlemen, if this is the country that you want, and you're not willing to stand up and take it back in some way, shape, or form, then I got to tell you, I don't know what else to suggest to you. Perhaps you should just go listen to Limbaugh rage or what's his name, AJ, talk about, you know, screaming and yelling. Never offers a solution. Maybe you should go watch Glenn Beck's movies because he's getting out of radio because politics is just not worth his life. I got to tell you, I understand where he comes from with that because I feel like there is not enough I can say or do. I've got an audience the size of a flea on the elephant's butt. And I can't even get the program expanded out there. I pay for it out of my pocket. Once in a while, somebody throws $20, $30. Once in a great while, somebody throws 100 at it. It's so woefully short. It's not worth my putting myself at risk financially and physically and legally for this, because nobody cares. You've been listening to America's Voice. I'm going to break off and do a couple of moments of commercials for our local sponsors. But I got to tell you, folks, America, time is up. And all of this notwithstanding, there will be no peace in this country. There will be no peaceful resolution to the BLM and the USDAs of the world and the NSAs and the CIAs and the FBIs and the FCCs there'll never be a peaceful solution to this because they will not let it go. They're going to make this come to blows. Or everyone's just going to get down on their knees and accept it. But there will be those of us who won't go that way. You've been listening to America's Voice Now. You can communicate with me directly by sending me email to mike@americasvoicenow.org. Have a good day.